Help us reach 1,000 subscribers on our new channel Lesbian Stories. We hope you enjoy the story. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. That spring morning in Atlanta, as I struggled to unlock my flower shop's front door while balancing a box of fresh peonies, I had no idea my world was about to shift on its axis. "Mommy, can I arrange the roses today?" Emma, my 8-year-old daughter, bounced excitedly beside me. Her blonde pigtails caught the morning sun, reminding me of myself at her age. "Let's get through breakfast first, sweetie," I smiled, finally managing to push the door open. The familiar scent of flowers enveloped us as we stepped into Thompson's Florals, my little corner of paradise, even if it was currently drowning in debt. The morning crawled by with the usual parade of rushed customers grabbing pre-made bouquets. By afternoon, my phone buzzed with a reminder about the community center meeting. I'd been avoiding these meetings, but the center's new grant program for local businesses was too good to pass up. "Sarah, can you watch Emma for an hour?" I called my best friend, who owned the bakery next door. "Going to fight City Hall?" She laughed. "Just don't punch anyone this time." I straightened my floral print dress and headed to the meeting, expecting another boring funding discussion. Instead, I walked into a heated debate about resource allocation. That's when I saw her. Standing at the podium, commanding attention in her charcoal gray suit, was the most striking woman I'd ever encountered. Laura Chen, as she introduced herself, was arguing passionately for small business support. "The backbone of this community isn't corporate interests," she declared, her dark eyes flashing. "It's the small business owners who pour their hearts into their work." I found myself speaking up before I could stop myself. "And what about single parents trying to keep their businesses afloat?" Her eyes met mine, and something electric passed between us. The debate that followed was intense, our words dancing around each other like sword fighters. Yet beneath our verbal sparring there was something else, a current of understanding, of mutual respect. "You make some valid points," she approached me afterward, extending her hand. "I'm Laura, the new volunteer coordinator." "Madison Thompson," I replied, noticing how her firm handshake lingered a moment too long. "I own the flower shop on Peachtree." "Ah, the famous Thompson's Florals. I've heard great things." Her smile was warm, disarming. "We should discuss how the center can support your business." As we talked, I found myself drawn to her intelligence, her passion for community service. It confused me. This pull toward another woman wasn't something I'd experienced before. I'd dated men exclusively since my divorce, and even those relationships had been few and far between. "Coffee tomorrow?" she suggested as we parted. "I'd love to hear more about your business challenges." I nodded, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach. Walking back to my shop, I told myself this was purely professional. Yet deep down, I knew something had shifted. Like the first bud of spring breaking through frozen ground, something new was beginning to bloom. Sarah was waiting with that knowing look of hers. "So, how was the meeting?" "Interesting," I replied, watching Emma arrange roses with surprising skill. "Very interesting indeed." Little did I know, that community center meeting would be the first chapter of the most unexpected love story of my life. Coffee with Laura turned into weekly meetings, each one lasting longer than the last. She helped me navigate the maze of grant applications with a patience I hadn't expected from someone who usually dealt with corporate law. There was something about her presence that made even paperwork feel less daunting. "You're underselling yourself here," she said one afternoon, leaning over my shoulder to point at the application. Her perfume, something subtle and citrusy, made it hard to focus on the numbers. "Your community impact is much bigger than you realize." I found myself sharing stories about my regular customers, the nervous teenagers buying first date bouquets, the elderly man who bought daisies every week for his wife's grave, the new mothers receiving congratulatory arrangements. Laura listened with genuine interest, occasionally brushing her dark hair behind her ear in a gesture I was beginning to find endearing. "Mom, can Laura come to our volunteer day?" Emma asked one evening as I tucked her into bed. We had a tradition of spending Saturday mornings helping at local nursing homes, bringing flowers to the residents. When I mentioned it to Laura, her eyes lit up. "I'd love to join you both." That Saturday morning, watching Laura help Emma create small bouquets for the elderly residents, something shifted in my chest. She wore jeans and a simple white t-shirt, so different from her usual corporate attire, and her natural ease with my daughter made my heart ache in an unfamiliar way. "You're really good with her," I said, as we watched Emma charm an elderly resident with her flower arranging skills. She's a special kid, Laura replied, her shoulder brushing against mine. Like mother, like daughter. The grant came through the following week. Laura brought the news herself, arriving at my shop just before closing time with a bottle of champagne. Time to celebrate, Madison. As I searched for glasses in the back room, I overheard Emma asking Laura, "Are you going to be around more now? Would you like that?" Laura's voice was gentle. "Yeah. You make Mom smile more." Their conversation made me pause. It was true. I had been smiling more lately. But it wasn't just about the grant. Later that evening, after Emma was asleep at Sarah's for a sleepover, Laura helped me reorganize the shop's storage room. In the narrow space between shelves of vases and ribbons, we worked in comfortable silence until I reached for a box at the same time she did. Our hands touched, and neither of us pulled away immediately. The air seemed to thicken around us. Laura's brown eyes met mine, and I noticed a fleck of gold in them I'd never seen before. My heart hammered against my ribs as her fingers slowly interlaced with mine. "Madison," she whispered, her voice husky, "I should probably tell you something." But before she could finish, a crash from the front of the shop made us jump apart. A delivery had been left precariously balanced and finally toppled over. The moment shattered like the vase on the floor, leaving me with trembling hands and confused thoughts. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about how natural it had felt to hold her hand, how right it had seemed in that moment. But what did that mean? I'd never thought about women that way before. Yet here I was, analyzing every interaction with Laura, every smile, every accidental touch. Sarah noticed the change in me during our morning coffee the next day. "You seem different lately," she observed, stirring her latte. "Happier, but also distracted." I watched Laura through the shop window as she passed by on her way to the community center, her black hair catching the morning sun. "I'm just grateful for the grant," I lied, ignoring the way my pulse quickened when Laura waved. "Uh-huh," Sarah smirked. "And I'm sure it has nothing to do with our new community volunteer coordinator?" I threw a napkin at her, but my friend's knowing smile followed me throughout the day. Something was blooming between Laura and me, something unexpected and slightly terrifying. The question was, did I have the courage to let it grow? That evening, after closing the shop, I found myself driving aimlessly through Atlanta's streets. My thoughts a tangled mess. The radio played some melancholic country song about forbidden love, and I had to laugh at the irony. Here I was, 34 years old, questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. "Still up for our walk tomorrow." Our evening walks had become a ritual over the past few weeks. We'd meet after I dropped Emma at her art class, supposedly to discuss community center projects. But lately, we'd been talking about everything else, our dreams, fears, childhood memories. "Of course," I replied, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach. The next evening, storm clouds gathered as we walked through Piedmont Park. Laura wore a light blue blouse that made her dark eyes seem deeper, more mysterious. We found ourselves sitting on a bench, watching the lightning flash in the distance. "Can I ask you something personal?" I ventured, heart racing. "Have you always known you were gay?" Laura finished with a gentle smile. "I figured it out in college. It wasn't some dramatic revelation, just a quiet understanding that women were who I wanted to be with." Thunder rumbled overhead as I absorbed her words. I've only been with men, but lately, the first drops of rain began to fall. Laura stood, offering her hand. "Let's get back to your shop before we're soaked." We didn't make it. The sky opened up halfway there, and we ran laughing through the downpour. By the time we reached the shelter of my shop's awning, we were both drenched. "Your hair looks like seaweed," Laura laughed, reaching out to brush a wet strand from my face. Her touch sent electricity through my skin. We stood there, breathless from running, water dripping from our clothes, and suddenly the air between us felt charged with possibility. "Madison," Laura whispered, her hand still on my cheek. "I think you know how I feel about you." "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely audible over the rain. "What if I'm wrong about what I'm feeling? What about Emma? What will people say? What are you feeling?" Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us. Her lips were soft, tasting of rain and something distinctly Laura. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper as she pulled me closer. Everything else faded away, the rain, my fears, the world itself. When we finally parted, Laura rested her forehead against mine. "Wow," she breathed. "Yeah," I agreed, my heart pounding. "That was perfect," she finished. Reality crashed back when my phone buzzed, Emma's art teacher asking if I was running late. I jumped back, suddenly aware of what I'd just done, what line I'd just crossed. "I have to go," I stammered, fumbling for my keys. "Emma." "Madison, wait!" Laura called after me, but I was already in my car driving away from the most incredible kiss of my life. The next few days were torture. I avoided Laura's calls, threw myself into work, and tried to pretend nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I caught myself touching my lips, remembering that kiss. I saw Laura everywhere, in coffee shop windows, in passing cars, in my dreams. Sarah cornered me in my shop's back room after watching me jump at every customer entrance. "Okay, spill it. What's going on with you and Laura?" "Nothing," I lied, arranging and rearranging the same bouquet. "Bull. You've been acting weird since that rainy evening. Did something happen?" I set down the flowers, my hands shaking slightly. "We kissed." And it was amazing," I whispered, finally admitting it aloud. "And terrifying, and I don't know what to do about it." Sarah hugged me tightly. "You know what to do. You're just scared to do it." She was right. That evening, after Emma was asleep, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, watching the stars appear one by one. Then I picked up my phone and typed, "Can we talk?" Laura's response came immediately. "I'm here whenever you're ready." I took a deep breath and hit dial, ready to face whatever this new chapter might bring. Because some things, I was learning, were worth being brave for. Laura suggested meeting at Piedmont Park, our special place. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden as I spotted her sitting by the lake, tossing breadcrumbs to eager ducks. She looked up as I approached, her smile hesitant but warm. "Hi," I said, sitting beside her. "Hi yourself," she replied. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke again. "You know, I've been coming here every evening hoping to see you." "I'm sorry I ran," I whispered. I needed time to process everything." "And have you? Processed it?" I turned to face her, taking in her beautiful features, the way the sunlight played in her dark hair. "I think so. I'm still scared, but I'm more scared of not exploring whatever this is between us." She reached for my hand, our fingers intertwining naturally. "We can take it slow," she assured me. "There's no rulebook we have to follow." That evening, we walked and talked until the stars came out. Laura told me about her first girlfriend in college, about coming out to her traditional Chinese parents, about the heartbreak that made her guard her heart so carefully. I shared my fears about Emma, about my conservative family in rural Georgia, about the customers who might turn away from my shop. "Can I tell you something?" Laura said as we sat on our bench. "That first day at the community center when you stood up and challenged me, I was already intrigued. But watching you with Emma, seeing how you pour your heart into your business and your community, that's when I knew I was in trouble." I leaned in and kissed her, no longer caring who might see us. This time, there was no running away. The next few weeks passed in a beautiful blur. Laura and I settled into a routine, stealing moments between work and family responsibilities. She'd bring me coffee in the mornings, helping me set up the shop before heading to her office. I'd save her favorite flowers, purple irises, for her desk at the community center. Emma, perceptive as always, noticed the change in our relationship. One Saturday morning, as the three of us prepared flowers for the nursing home, she looked up from her arrangement. "Laura, do you love my mom?" I nearly dropped the scissors I was holding. Laura met my panicked gaze with calm assurance before turning to Emma. "I care about your mom very much. How would you feel about that?" Emma considered this while carefully placing a daisy in her bouquet. "I think it's good. Mom smiles a lot more now, and you make really good pancakes." That night, after Emma was asleep, Laura and I sat on my back porch swing. The Georgia night was warm and heavy with the scent of jasmine. She pulled me close, and I rested my head on her shoulder. "Move in with us," I whispered, surprising myself with the sudden certainty of wanting this. "Are you sure?" Her voice was husky with emotion. "It's a big step. I've never been more sure of anything." That night, we made love for the first time. It was tender and passionate and perfect. Everything I never knew I was missing. Afterward, lying in her arms, I felt completely at peace. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Laura and Emma's laughter in the kitchen. Following the smell of coffee and pancakes, I found them attempting to flip pancakes in the air, more batter on their faces than in the pan. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Laura grinned, pulling me in for a quick kiss. "Ew, gross," Emma giggled, but her smile was bright and accepting. Later that day, as I arranged a wedding bouquet in my shop, Sarah stopped by with our usual coffee order. "You're glowing," she observed. "Love looks good on you. Is it that obvious?" "Honey, you practically have hearts floating around your head." She paused, then added more seriously, "I'm happy for you, Mad. You deserve this." I watched through the window as Laura crossed the street, probably heading to another community meeting. She caught my eye and smiled, and my heart did that now familiar flip. "Yeah," I agreed, touching my lips where I could still feel her morning kiss. I think I finally found what I wasn't even looking for. But life has a way of testing the things we hold most dear. That evening, Laura's phone rang during dinner, and the look on her face as she answered it told me our perfect little bubble was about to burst. Laura's hands trembled as she set down her phone. The pasta on our plates grew cold as she explained her family's investment firm in Seattle was facing bankruptcy charges. Her father, always proud and independent, had finally called for help after exhausting every other option. "I have to go," she said, her voice cracking. "They need legal representation they can trust." "For how long?" I asked, already feeling the distance growing between us. "A few weeks, maybe months." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'll come back, Madison, I promise." Emma took the news hard, hiding in her room when Laura packed her suitcase the next day. I found our daughter clutching the dried flower crown Laura had helped her make last week. "Everyone leaves," Emma whispered, and my heart broke a little. The drive to the airport was quiet, heavy with unspoken fears. Standing at the security checkpoint, Laura pulled me close. "We'll make this work," she promised. "Technology is amazing these days, right?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Her kiss tasted of tears and goodbye. The first few weeks were manageable. We video chatted every night, sharing our days. Laura would show me the Seattle skyline from her temporary office, and I'd give her virtual tours of new flower arrangements. Emma would join our calls, excitedly showing Laura her art projects. But slowly, things began to change. Laura's calls became shorter, her responses delayed. The bankruptcy case was more complicated than expected, she explained, involving multiple shell companies and offshore accounts. "I miss you," I whispered during one late-night call, watching her tired face on my screen. "The bed feels too big without you." "I miss you too," she sighed. "But something strange is happening here. Dad's records don't add up. I think—" The connection suddenly cut out. When she called back, she seemed distracted, changing the subject whenever I mentioned her father's case. Our intimate conversations gave way to surface-level updates and quick good-night calls. Then came the odd financial requests. First, it was a simple question about transferring funds between accounts. Then, urgent requests for emergency wire transfers to save the family business. "Something doesn't feel right," Sarah warned when I mentioned the requests. "Why would a corporate lawyer need emergency cash transfers?" I dismissed her concerns at first, but doubt crept in. Laura's behavior became increasingly erratic. She'd disappear for days, then reappear with elaborate explanations about lost phones and crashed computers. One night, unable to sleep, I Googled the Seattle law firm where she claimed to be working. The address she'd given didn't exist. Panic seized me. I tried calling her regular number, disconnected. The email address she'd been using recently bounced back my messages. Her social media accounts had gone dark. Emma found me crying in the shop's back room, surrounded by wilting purple irises I'd been saving for Laura's return. "Is Laura ever coming back?" she asked, her small voice steady. "I don't know, sweetie," I admitted, pulling her close. "But we'll figure it out together." That evening, I received a strange email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Urgent Laura Chen identity theft." The sender claimed to be from Seattle PD's cybercrime unit. My hands shook as I opened the message. The words blurred before my eyes. "Sophisticated identity theft ring, targeting LGBTQ individuals, emotional manipulation, Significant financial fraud. I sat there, staring at my screen until it went dark, remembering all the little inconsistencies I'd ignored. The woman I loved was out there somewhere, possibly in danger, possibly being impersonated, or worse. Had everything between us been a lie? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Madison, please help. Can't explain now. Don't trust any calls or messages except this number. The signature was LC, followed by a private joke only Laura and I shared about the duck that had stolen our sandwich in the park. I stared at the message, my heart racing. Was this really Laura reaching out, or another layer of deception? Either way, I realized I couldn't just sit and wait anymore. The woman I loved, whether she was victim or perpetrator, had answers I needed. Setting my phone down, I walked to Emma's room and watched her sleeping peacefully. Then I called Sarah. I need a favor, I said when she answered. How do you feel about watching Emma for a few days while I take a trip to Seattle? The morning sun streaming through my apartment window illuminated the scattered evidence of my obsession printouts of Laura's emails, bank statements, and pages of notes. I hadn't slept properly in days, analyzing every communication we'd had since she left for Seattle. Sarah arrived early, coffee in hand, concern etched on her face. You look terrible. Thanks, I muttered, shoving papers into a folder. Are you sure you're okay watching Emma? Stop asking. Just promise me you'll be careful. She grabbed my arm. And Madison, don't empty your savings chasing ghosts. I hugged Emma goodbye, promising to bring her back a souvenir from Seattle. She squeezed me tight, whispering, "Find Laura, Mommy." On the flight, I reviewed everything I knew. The cybercrime unit's email had detailed a sophisticated scam targeting LGBTQ individuals through community centers and dating apps. The fraudsters would build emotional connections over months before manufacturing family emergencies requiring urgent financial assistance. But something didn't add up. Laura had never asked me for money directly. The request had come through increasingly desperate emails from her father, and that last text message. Only the real Laura could have known about that duck. My phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. Don't go to the address I gave my community center. It's being watched. I texted back, prove you're really Laura. The response came quickly. First kiss in the rain under your shop's awning. You tasted like mint tea and said you were scared. My heart skipped. That detail had never been shared with anyone. Following the new instructions, I found myself in a small coffee shop in downtown Seattle. The barista handed me a note with my order. Back room, 2 p.m. At exactly 2, I pushed through the door to find Laura sitting alone at a table, her face pale and drawn. She looked up, tears filling her eyes. Madison, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I wanted to run to her, to hold her, but caution held me back. Explain. She told me everything. Her family's firm had indeed been in trouble, but not from bankruptcy. Her father had unwittingly become involved with a criminal organization using the business for money laundering. When Laura discovered the truth, they threatened Emma's safety if she didn't cooperate. They used my phone, my email, she explained, voice shaking. They wanted to use our relationship to funnel money. When I refused to help them target you, they cut me off completely. Why didn't you go to the police? I did, 3 weeks ago. That's why I had to disappear. The cybercrime unit has been building a case, but these people are sophisticated. They've already shifted their operation twice. A noise from the front of the shop made us both jump. Laura's hand found mine under the table, and despite everything, that familiar warmth spread through me. I know I've ruined everything, she whispered. But you have to believe me. What we have is real. Every moment, every kiss, every promise was real. I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Instead, I saw the same Laura who had helped Emma with her homework, who brought me coffee every morning, who had changed my life with a kiss in the rain. I believe you, I said finally. But no more secrets. We face whatever comes next together. She broke down then, and I pulled her into my arms, not caring who might see. We stayed like that until her tears subsided, then began planning our next moves. That evening, in my hotel room, I made 2 calls, one to Emma, assuring her everything was okay, and another to the FBI agent Laura had been working with. As I listened to him detail their plans to catch the organization, Laura curled up beside me, her head on my shoulder. I missed this, she murmured. Just being close to you. Me too, I replied, running my fingers through her hair. But when this is over, we're going to have a long talk about trust and communication. She nodded against my shoulder. I promise, no more running away. Outside, Seattle's rain tapped against the window, so different from our Georgia storms. Tomorrow would bring challenges, interviews with federal agents, evidence compilation, protective measures for Emma. But for now, we had this moment, this room, this reconciliation. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Emma wanted you to know she left cookies for Laura in the kitchen. Some things I realized were worth fighting for. Some loves were worth crossing the country to save. And sometimes, the biggest test of trust comes not in the falling but in the rebuilding. The next few days in Seattle passed in a blur of federal agents, depositions, and endless cups of coffee. Laura's testimony proved crucial in untangling the complex web of fraud. I watched her in admiration as she methodically laid out evidence, her lawyer's mind sharp despite her exhaustion. Your girlfriend's quite something, Agent Roberts told me during a break. Her work will help protect countless others from similar scams. I smiled at the word girlfriend. It seemed inadequate for what Laura and I had become through all this. Between meetings with the FBI, we managed to visit Laura's parents. Their modest home in the suburbs was a far cry from the wealthy facade the criminals had created. Her father, a gentle man with graying temples, broke down when he saw us. I should have known better, he kept saying. I've put everyone in danger. Laura held his hand firmly. No, Dad, they're the criminals, not you. We're going to fix this. Her mother, busy in the kitchen making dumplings, pulled me aside. Thank you, she whispered in accented English, for believing in my daughter when even we doubted ourselves. That evening, as Laura and I walked along the Seattle waterfront, she suddenly stopped and turned to me. Come with me, she said, pulling me toward the pier. A ferry was just departing, its lights reflecting off the dark water. Laura wrapped her arms around me from behind, and we watched the city skyline shimmer. When I was hiding from those people, she murmured against my hair, this was what I thought about, just holding you, watching the water. I was so afraid I'd never get to do this again. I turned in her arms. You're stuck with me now. No more running. The kiss we shared tasted of promise and new beginnings. The breakthrough came 3 days later. The FBI's cyber team, using Laura's information, tracked the organization's main server. Within hours, arrests were being made across 3 states. It's over, Laura breathed, watching the news coverage in our hotel room. Really over. I called Emma that night on video chat, and her face lit up seeing us together. Are you coming home now? Both of you? Yes, sweetie, Laura answered, squeezing my hand. Both of us. The flight back to Atlanta felt different from my anxious journey west. Laura dozed against my shoulder, exhausted but peaceful. I watched the clouds below, thinking about how close I'd come to losing her. Sarah and Emma were waiting at the airport, holding a sign covered in glitter that read, Welcome home, moms. Laura's breath caught when she saw it. Emma launched herself at us both, and we ended up in a messy group hug right there in the arrival hall. Sarah, ever the photographer, captured the moment on her phone. The community center's been calling, she told us as we drove home. Apparently your case has inspired them to start a fraud awareness program for LGBTQ individuals. Laura smiled. Maybe something good can come from all this. That evening, after Emma was asleep, we sat on our back porch. The familiar Georgia humidity wrapped around us like a blanket, fireflies dancing in the darkness. You know, Laura said thoughtfully, when I first moved here, I never imagined I'd find a family. Is that what we are? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She pulled me closer. You and Emma, you're everything. These past weeks made me realize I don't want to spend another day without you both. A week later, Laura testified via video conference at the preliminary hearing. The prosecutors were confident the case was solid. As she closed the laptop, I saw tears in her eyes. Happy tears, she assured me, pulling me into a kiss. We did it. That night, we celebrated with a family dinner. Emma insisted on making her famous spaghetti, with Sarah joining us. As I watched Laura help Emma measure pasta portions, both of them laughing at some shared joke, I realized something profound. Sometimes love isn't just about the grand gestures or dramatic rescues. Sometimes it's about choosing each other every day, through criminal conspiracies and cooking disasters alike. And sometimes, the most beautiful love stories are the ones that survive the storm. "Mom," Emma called from the kitchen. "Laura's burning the garlic bread." "I am not," Laura protested, though the smell of slightly charred bread suggested otherwise. And just like that, we were home. All of us, together, exactly where we belonged. A year has passed since the Seattle incident, and life has settled into a beautiful rhythm. The flower shop is thriving, partly thanks to the publicity from Laura's case. Turns out, people love buying flowers from the store that helped bring down a criminal organization. Who knew? "Mom, have you seen my rainbow tie?" Emma called from upstairs. Today was the annual community center fundraiser, and my 11-year-old was determined to coordinate with the event's pride theme. "Check Laura's office," I shouted back, adjusting the centerpiece for the 100th time. The fundraiser was being held in our shop this year, and everything had to be perfect. Laura appeared behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "The flowers are beautiful, stop fussing," says the woman who reorganized her closing speech 15 times last night, I teased, leaning back into her embrace. The past year had brought changes, all good ones. Laura's fraud awareness program at the community center had become a national model, earning recognition from LGBTQ organizations across the country. She split her time between corporate law and community work now, finding a balance that made her eyes shine with purpose. Emma had blossomed too. Having 2 moms had made her more empathetic, more aware. She'd started a diversity club at her school, with Laura's proud guidance. The bell above the shop door chimed as Sarah entered, carrying a massive cake decorated with rainbow flowers. "Where's my favorite niece?" "Up here, Aunt Sarah," Emma called, finally emerging with the found tie. As guests began arriving for the fundraiser, I watched Laura work the room. She was in her element, sharing our story, inspiring others to support the community center's new initiatives. The way she spoke about our journey, from that first heated debate to the cyber fraud investigation, had everyone captivated. "And none of this would have been possible," she said, catching my eye across the room, "without the bravery of one stubborn florist who refused to give up on love." The crowd awed, making me blush. Emma, standing beside me, squeezed my hand. Later, as the evening wound down, Laura clinked her glass for attention. I assumed it was time for her closing speech, but she turned to face me instead. "Madison Thompson," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "When I first walked into that community center meeting, I had no idea I was about to meet the love of my life. You've shown me what real family means. You and Emma have given me a home I never knew I was missing." My heart started racing as she reached into her pocket. "We've faced criminals together," she continued with a small laugh. "So I figure marriage should be a piece of cake." She dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring box. "Will you marry me?" The ring was beautiful, a delicate band with a small rainbow opal, surrounded by tiny flowers. But more beautiful was the look of pure love in Laura's eyes. "Yes," I whispered, then louder. "Yes!" The shop erupted in cheers as Laura slipped the ring on my finger. Emma crashed into us both, creating a group hug that soon included Sarah and half the guests. "About time," Sarah muttered, wiping tears from her eyes. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep on the couch and the last guests had gone home, Laura and I slow danced among the flowers. The shop smelled of roses and joy, if joy had a scent. "You know," I murmured against her shoulder, "when you first left for Seattle, I thought I'd lost everything." She pulled back to look at me, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "And now?" "Now I know some things are meant to be. Like fierce lawyers who challenge stubborn florists at community meetings. Like single moms who kiss strangers in the rain," she added with a smile. "Like families that find each other in the most unexpected ways," Emma's sleepy voice chimed in from the couch. Laura and I laughed, extending our arms to include her in our dance. As we swayed together in the dim light of my little flower shop, I realized this was more than a happy ending. It was a beautiful beginning. Some love stories start with a bang, others with a whisper. Ours started with an argument and ended with a promise. And somewhere in between, we created something rare and precious. A garden of love, blooming against all odds. "So," Laura whispered, "ready for our next adventure?" Looking at my ring, at Emma's sleeping face, at the life we'd built together, I knew the answer with absolute